I'm so excited to have with me today Suzette Chaumette. Suzette is a public health researcher with a master's in public health degree. She's a food coach and social entrepreneur with almost 30 years of experience in healthcare. During her career, she saw people suffering from issues that could be addressed by changing food and eating habits. Things like diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, and some cancers. Suzette focuses on helping people learn how, what, and where we eat for better outcomes through her work at Food Indie, the nonprofit organization that she founded in 2021. What Suzette enjoys most is teaching people how to eat for health and wellness and grow food forests in small spaces. She has over 22,000 followers. 22,000 followers. Go girl on TikTok and Instagram, where she shares easy to do techniques for eating well to live a healthy, fulfilled life. She hosts three podcasts: the Food Indie Podcast, the Positively Green Podcast, and Unpack the Real Stuff. And she loves connecting with people on their food journeys, wherever they are. She loves food, growing it, cooking it, talking about it. She's the right person for our conversation today. Suzette has done a lot she's proud of. She has a degree in biology from Holy Names University and is a graduate of the Celia Scott Weatherhead School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine in maternal and child health. She's also a cultural humility facilitator and a permaculture designer who brings all of her 30 years of experience in food indie, all about getting people closer to their food. And let me just say, indie is like independent.
That's right.
And she also is very proud of the role that she plays in her family, being a mother to two daughters, auntie to seven nephews, and a caregiver and death doula to her parents through the end of their lives, having friendships throughout her life that last for many, many years.
Mm.
Welcome, Suzette. Thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to dive in with you and have our audience learn more about what you're doing in the world. Thank you so much.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
You're so welcome. Girl, how did you get 22,000 followers? That's what I want to know.
Through a lot of hard work, and I will say that it's been a lot harder than it looks. I think there are some people who get these viral videos, but when you're talking about food and gardening, it takes a little bit more because not everybody is interested in growing their own food. So, you got to motivate people to want to watch videos about gardening and eating from your garden. So. But I'll share some tips with you a little later. I can tell you a
Okay.
little bit more.
I love that. I love that. And you know what I'm just sensing is that just speaks to your creativity because you're right. In order to really capture someone's attention, you got to get them in the first 3 seconds.
Hmm.
And the fact that you've done so well means that you're not only an expert on the healing properties of food, but also on how to really reach people and touch them in a place that's really important. So,
Yeah, that was really the shift that I made because I knew that I wasn't reaching all the people that I wanted to, one on one in a clinical setting or even in the community. If you have somebody who comes to an event, you're just reaching that one person or the 20 people in the room. But I was thinking that if I could use social media, then I could reach people way beyond my own community, in a global community and reach people who, really could resonate with what it was that I was talking about. And so I started to put more effort into that just so that I could, share some of the ideas that I had. And also, I was feeling the urgency of getting people to grow more of their food, just given, where we are today in our society. I really wanted to encourage people to go back to the old ways, to what their grandmothers and great grandmothers did as a solution to some of our food issues right now.
Hmm. And I can say my mom always had collard greens growing in the backyard,
Hmm.
always had tomatoes growing, and I actually picked that habit up and set a little zucchini garden in one of my places where I lived.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean it's such a great feeling to actually put a seed in the ground and
Hmm.
nurture it and watch it grow.
It
So,
it is. It is. And we're not that far away from it. I think sometimes we we don't associate ourselves as being people who grow food, right? Some people have negative ideas about what it means to grow food. People don't want to get dirty or their hands in the soil, or there are lots of ways that people also tie gardening to our enslavement. And so I try to challenge people and say, our stories go way beyond enslavement. That's one part of our history. But prior to that, we were very nature-based people. We grew our food. We celebrated food. We harvested our food, and it was interrupted by enslavement and the brutality of enslavement. But we can also go back to our old ways that empowered us as a community, the way that we ate, planted, cooked together,
mhm.
and in celebrating food. And so that's what I'm here to do, is bring the celebration back and some of these old ways back.
That's wonderful. And I actually think of it also as just being a source of freedom.
It
You
is.
know,
Food
when
is
we're
freedom.
food is freedom, and when you can do that for yourself and
Hmm.
not have to depend on the grocery store
Hmm.
or the prices going up,
Yep.
in the grocery store, that's a source of freedom as well.
It is. And so many people are concerned about grocery prices. We're all concerned about grocery prices going up, except, the people who don't have to do their own grocery shopping, right?
Exactly.
But those of us who are really concerned about the prices of food going up can control some of that by growing food at home. And that's what I teach people to do, is grow some things that are not only things that you like to eat, foods that you like to eat, but also ones that have a lot of nutrition in them. So if you grow them at home, you have access to them as long as you're growing them. And that's one less thing or two less things that you have to buy from the grocery store. You don't have to grow everything, you just grow a couple of things.
Yeah, that's really great. That's really great. So now tell me, Suzette, can you share with our listeners what drew you to focus on the healing properties of food? I know in our bio, reading your bio, I know it had to do with health. And were there any particular moments or experiences that actually shape your understanding of food as medicine?
Hmm. Yeah, thanks for that question. It actually has nothing to do with my career at all, but has to do with my mom and being in her kitchen and her garden. From a very early age, my mom took me into the garden, and it wasn't that she was teaching me to garden directly, but it was where she would go to get herbs for dinner, or sometimes she would grow some greens. We had a plum tree in our backyard, and every time she would harvest whatever was growing, she would tell me something about it. And the lessons that she was teaching me were ones that she learned from her grandmother, Elizabeth, back in Haiti. So my parents immigrated to the United States in 1967, and part of their survival in this country was having a garden.
Hmm.
And I think that being raised up in a garden helped me to understand food's healing properties, just because I was a little girl watching what my mom would do. And, if she had a stomach ache, she would go outside and get some some dandelion, and it would help her digestion. Or she would get thyme for the marinade she was making. She would grow garlic and potatoes, and everything that she grew in the kitchen grew in the garden had its purpose and a story. So, the plums that we would get every July we had so many that she had to figure out what to do with them. So sometimes she would just eat them straight off the tree. Sometimes she would make plum wine. Other times she would jar them, can them. So I began to see how food was not only about feeding us, but it was medicine too. It
Mhm.
was, out of necessity. It wasn't just take this antacid, but it's, what are the things that we grow already to help with acid reflux that are not going to have all the side effects. And that was my mom's thing, is that she didn't want to take any chemicals, she would say. No chemicals that were made in a lab. She wanted to do everything in the backyard. So that led to me thinking about how we each have access to plant medicine in our environments, growing in our own gardens, growing on the street. I mean, there's food growing everywhere, but we've gotten away from knowing what these medicine plants are. And
Mhm.
so I felt like I really wanted to help people go back to the ways that our grandparents and great grandparents had that were healing to them. And when you look back 2 or 3 generations, we didn't have the same obesity rates. We didn't have the
Mhm.
same diabetes rates. We didn't have the same cancer rates. And it started me asking the question, well, why? What is it that we're doing that's making us have these disparities and statistics that we hear about all the time, that Black folks are at greater risk for these diseases? What is that about? And then when I started to ask that question over and over again, it came back to the foods we were eating.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's how I began to get into a career around food and food for your health. And only in 2021 did I say, you know what? I'm going to do this all the time. I'm not just going to talk about it anymore as a data point, but I'm here to do something about it and use the knowledge that I have to share it with people and to help them get closer to their food. So going back to gardens, understanding that gardens aren't just about food, they're also about your wellness, your stress level. If you spend time out in the garden, your stress level goes down. And there's data to show that. So yes, that's how it all began in my mama's kitchen.
Beautiful, beautiful. Sometimes I think we forget, we think of ourselves as separate from nature. We
Hmm.
see ourselves walking on the earth. We don't see
Yeah,
ourselves as a part of the earth.
that's
And
right.
your point about, getting your hands dirty, like working in the soil, being
Hmm.
out there in nature is very healing in and of itself because we're getting this kind of biofeedback from the system that we are a part of.
That's right.
Yes, yes.
That's right.
So, what patterns have you observed about how our relationship with food contributes to illness or healing? You mentioned that it's the food we eat, and can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Sure, I can. But before I do, I want to just make this one point about people saying they don't want to get their hands dirty in the soil.
Hmm.
Wear gloves. That's all you got to do is put on some gloves and clothes that you don't mind getting dirty.
Hmm.
You will get
Hmm.
dirty, but it's worth it. So your question about food as it relates to illness, you know, there are many things in grocery stores right now that cause illness. High salt, high sugar, high fat, pesticides, preservatives, additives. So when we go into the store, right now, a lot of people are looking for convenience. And those convenient foods, you just add water. And I always tell people if it says just add water, don't. That is not the thing that you want to do. Because that means that there's a lot of chemicals in that product that were made in a laboratory. They were not, grown outside. So in grocery stores, there are a lot of products that are available to us that look appealing, put it in the microwave or just add water. And these convenience foods are often full of salts, sugar, dyes, preservatives, additives. And when you think of what these words are, additives, they're adding a bunch of things to your food to make it have certain flavors or certain smells. And this convenience marketing, this thing to tell you, oh, it's just easy, it's ready in minutes, also takes away from the nutrition that is in those products. So I always tell people, when you go to the grocery store, make sure that you don't go down the center aisles because that's where most of the junk is. The salt, the fat, the sugar, that's where you're going to find the most of it. But if you do something called perimeter shopping, where you shop just around the outside of the grocery store, that's where you're going to find your Whole Foods. Not Whole Foods, the brand. We're talking about Whole Foods. So when I say Whole Foods, I mean it's as close to how it was grown that you see it on the shelf. So a carrot is a whole food. Broccoli is a whole food. A tomato is a whole food. But as soon as you start processing foods to change how they are, then they become processed foods. So something like anytime it's in a can or in a box, that's when it starts to be more processed. Even if processed means that it's boiled in a can. So canned tomatoes, for example, can be boiled while they're in the can, cooked while they're in the can. So when you do your perimeter shopping, you're going to hit all of your food groups, your fruits and vegetables. Then you go around and there's your dairy, your eggs, your milk, your yogurt, cheese. Then you'll usually get to the butcher. That's where you can get your meats. Then you come around and you'll find your breads and your grains. And then if you use that perimeter shopping, then you're going to get ingredients instead of complete meals, right? What we want to do is get ingredients because we know exactly what it is that they are that we're putting in food. So the way that some of these things cause illness is when we're talking about foods that are preserved with salt, for example, that drives up blood pressure.
Mhm.
Foods that have a lot of sugar. We know what happens when people have too much sugar or too little sugar. It doesn't mean that if you have too much sugar, you get diabetes. That's not how it works. But you do get sugar spikes that aren't necessarily good for your body when you feed your body too much of one thing and it has to process that thing within your body. And then sometimes those things contribute to illness. So we try to avoid processed foods because they help reduce your risk for high salt, high sugar, and high fat.
hmm one of the things that I just want to piggyback on what you just said. Often the labels, even if you are in those middle aisles, and they'll say sugar-free
Mm-hmm.
or they'll say gluten-free or whatever. But it's also important to look at what it's not saying
Yeah.
because, those kinds of things are put there to distract you from how highly processed the food is. And as you stated, highly processed foods actually do contribute to illness. And
Mm-hmm.
there have been studies recently about how highly processed foods actually result in more cancers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so really, really good points you're making.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And also when you're reading labels, if you can't say the ingredient that's on the label, Ask yourself some questions. Do I want to eat that thing?
Mm-hmm.
If it says something that I don't even know what it is, should I put this in my mouth?
Mm-hmm.
Because these chemicals really do have an effect on your body, and they affect people in different ways. So I say reduce your risk for disease by eating foods that you recognize exactly what it is that's in it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting you should say that because I was having brunch with a gentleman who is not from our culture, and I ordered grits. And he asked me, "What are grits?" And I said, "Well, it's like ground corn." And I thought of the word hominy, which is what was always on the box of grits that we ate. And so when I got home, I looked up the word hominy, and it talked about hominy being a corn that's been treated by a particular process, which could be having been soaked in lye, 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 or lime. And so at that moment, I thought, well, I won't be eating those again. I was talking to my uncle about it. He's our elder in our family, and he grew up in Mississippi. And he said, no, no, not all grits are soaked in lime. The corn, it could be a stone ground. He told me that his uncle had um, a processing plant for turning corn into grits, and they actually used a grinding process.
Mm-hmm.
He also talked about how they could be out all day in the fields and in the forest, and foraging and just eating from nature, and
Yeah.
how that was a beautiful way to grow up.
And we can still do that. That's the thing, is that there is food that we can still forage. It doesn't even have to be a whole thing. You don't have to be like on a foraging expedition. The food is everywhere.
Hmm.
And so I show people how to recognize that through Food Indie. We have, like, I show people about, like I mentioned, dandelion earlier.
Hmm.
We treat dandelion like it's a weed, but it's really not a weed. It's just an unwanted plant in your garden. But if you don't want
Hmm.
it there, pull it up. You can eat the roots, you can eat the leaves, you can eat the flowers, and they're really good for the liver.
Hmm.
So, yes, and also what you said about your uncle and the way food is processed. Over the last 30 years, we have had more processed foods introduced into our food system. So,
Hmm.
what your uncle would have had when he was younger was processed differently because they didn't have so many industrial food systems the way they do right now.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so, yeah, they're going to put all kinds of things in there to maximize profit for the company owners, the corporate giants. And they're not interested in feeding us nutritious food. They're interested in feeding us, but not feeding us nutritious food. And there is a difference. So people do have to really pay attention to how their food is processed, and don't get overwhelmed. Like, a lot of times you hear people talking about special diets and, ways that people should be eating. And then they're just like, I just don't know what to eat. But try to make it fun instead of overwhelming. Figure out things that can help you feel better and feel lighter when you eat. You should never feel where you're like, oh my gosh, I just ate so much and I feel so tired. Like, ask yourself, why am I so tired after I'm eating this food? And was it a food that's giving me energy? Is it energizing me? Or
Hmm.
is it depleting me because it takes so much to digest it? That's why you get tired, is that you take a lot to digest that food, and all the blood is rushing to your stomach to get it done.
Hmm. And also not, I think the other thing that's we've been sort of programmed to continue eating,
Yeah.
like clean that plate
Right.
you know, which is a bad thing, actually. You shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
be eating until you're full
Right.
anyway,
That's
right?
right. That's
Yeah.
right.
So you say that you help people to quote unquote get closer to their food.
Mm-hmm.
What does that closeness mean and why is it important for healing?
The closeness is important because it helps us understand what it is that we're actually eating. And like I mentioned earlier, we've gotten away from knowing where our food comes from. And, people again give you these labels like local and organic. But how far is local? What is local? Is local your farmer's market? Is local 5 miles? Is local 500 miles? How far is local?
Hmm.
Once you begin to understand where your food comes from, you build a relationship with it differently too. Because now it's about, well, where did this salad come from? Oh, I didn't know that the lettuce came from one farm and the tomato came from another farm and the broccoli from another farm and the cashews from not cashews, whatever, whatever nut. I'm allergic to nuts, so I just threw one out there.
I
But,
hear you.
but,
That's a
you know,
bad one.
yeah, but, where the cranberries came from and the raisins came from. Once you put your whole salad together and you look at that plate, you could have 10 different farms represented in one salad. But when you grow your food, when you plant your own lettuce and your cucumbers and your tomatoes, and you pick them yourself, you build a relationship with that salad because you helped it become your food.
Mhm.
If
Mhm.
you compost your food and you compost your garden waste like leaves and sticks and other things in the garden, and you feed that compost to your plants and you watch your plants grow, and then you realize that they're ready for harvest, and you go out and you cut your lettuce and your greens that you're putting in your salad, you build a relationship. So I'm saying to people, build a relationship with your food, know where it comes from, and you will then also control more of your risk for diseases because now you know exactly what you're eating. And again, you don't have to grow everything. That's not what this is about. But if you grow your own greens, you know that you didn't spray them with pesticides or other kinds of fertilizers that might be harmful to your health. You know exactly what you did and exactly what you did to take care of them, what the weather was like. You can have more control over the food that you're close to.
Mhm.
And by the way, the answer to that question, local is 400 miles or less.
Wow.
And
Mhm.
that's far.
Mhm. Well, and I think even if we are not looking at local, often it can be from another country,
Oh, yeah.
like these ingredients from this place, that place. And
Yes.
actually, there's really some value in the connection with the place where you are and the things that grow there because you're a part of that system.
Mm-hmm.
That system is a part of you. So, yeah, very good, very, very good points. So, what are the most important nutritional considerations for someone currently undergoing cancer treatment? And how does treatment affect the body's nutritional needs? Is
Mm.
that something you're comfortable speaking about?
I can speak to it a little bit. Now, when we're talking about anybody's nutrition, it's important to begin first with your care team. Any advice that I give here is strictly from my perspective, but I don't know what you're going through in your own life. And so it's good to talk to the professionals that are working directly with you. So let me just put that out there first. Um, it's good for people who are under any kind of treatment to have foods that energize you and get your body to heal faster. So things like vitamin A and beta carotene are two things that help your body heal and they strengthen your body. So it's not necessarily about the cancer itself. It's about loving your body and giving it what it needs in order to do better through your cancer treatment. So I'm going to invite people who are listening to get out a pen and paper because I'm going to give you a couple of foods that have vitamin A in them and beta carotene. So vitamin A, you're going to find that in cod liver oil. Oof, I know we used to have to take that when we were younger, but it has lots of vitamin A in it. Liver, eggs, and dairy. So your milk, yogurt. And if you're vegan, there are substitutes for that. That are plant based. So you can get the beta carotene, which is processed by your body into vitamin A. So you can find that in carrots, tomatoes, watercress, and which is also a great source of iron, broccoli, spinach, cantaloupe, and apricots.
Hmm.
So by eating these kinds of foods, whether you're a vegan or not, you help your body strengthen itself to fight the disease that you have, cancer
Hmm.
or otherwise. And so that's why having a good set of foods that you can eat that strengthen your body is important for your healing, for your health and healing. Also, I talk to people a lot about eating leafy greens. So a lot of times people think about collards, but there are so many leafy greens. There's collard greens, turnip greens, kale, Swiss chard, anything that has a big leaf and is dark green. Those are the kinds of things that you want to be eating. And also if you're dealing with nausea during treatment, eating small amounts of those foods with lots of vitamins and minerals in them is going to help you because you don't have to eat a lot to get a good amount of nutrition. And with greens, you don't want to cook them to death. Like a lot of times people will boil them and boil them and boil them. And that's good for flavor, but not necessarily for your the nutrients.
Hmm.
What you want to do is just lightly cook them. You know, with collards, you can just saute them with a little bit of olive oil and some garlic, chop them really fine, and then eat them by just barely steaming them. You're going to get a lot more out of them. Now, you can still have your greens in the other way, but make sure that you also have them where they're not as cooked down.
It's funny you should say that. I was talking to a friend a couple days ago about what I was preparing for Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
And several years ago at her home, I had made sauteed greens,
Mm-hmm.
chopping them really, really, really thin.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, yeah, my brother still talks about those fried greens. He never heard of fried greens. So, but you're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
We have a tendency in our community to overcook
Yes.
and to really get in the habit of leaving some of that nutrition in the food
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
before we eat it. It's really good. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, a lot of times people will say that they don't want to have to give something up because that's how my grandmother did it or that's how my mom did it. I don't want to give that up. And I'm not suggesting that you give it up. I'm suggesting that you add to what you know about
hmm
how to cook greens, you know?
hmm hmm
I don't want to take anything away from people, but
hmm
let's just
I
shift it a little
do.
bit sometimes. I know.
I do.
I mean, I do have some things that I want people to stop
No,
eating,
I know.
like
I know.
soda and chips. Please stop because that's not
hmm
doing you anything right.
hmm hmm Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
because the last time I ate quote unquote ham. I think I was like 19 or 20. And one Thanksgiving, I had a piece of ham and almost passed out.
Hmm.
And it was my body saying,
Mm-mm.
we don't want that,
Yeah.
you know. So,
Yeah, your body will start talking to you. The
mhm,
more you get close to your food, your body will tell you, like, I didn't really like eating that. And you'll get a
mhm,
stomach ache or you'll get a headache. You might even get some heart palpitations.
mhm, mhm.
But you have to be paying attention to what you ate and how you feel after you ate that to really begin to understand what your body needs and what it's asking for.
Exactly,
Hmm.
exactly. So, are there specific foods or nutrients that can help manage side effects like fatigue, inflammation? You've already mentioned dandelion for digestive issues, but
Hmm.
is there anything that comes to mind for those, for particularly for people who have are going through some kind of medical treatment?
Hmm. You know, I have a set group of 5 things that I tell people they should be eating on a regular basis to reduce inflammation in their bodies and to help support themselves through illness. And they are things that we eat all the time, but you may not know that they're medicine. So the first thing are onions. White onions, yellow onions, red onions, green onions. Adding those to your diet helps to reduce inflammation. The same is true for garlic. Garlic is another thing that helps. I mentioned greens earlier. Have a variety of greens. And one that I did not mention earlier were beet greens. So I love beet greens, not only because they're a leafy green, but they also have a lot of other nutrients in them. So that red vein that goes through them also is full of iron and calcium and fiber. So when you get your greens, I'm sorry, when you get your beets at the grocery store, make sure that you get them with those greens on there because the whole thing can be eaten, both the root and the greens. So that you can chop those up and saute them with, again, garlic and onions, a little bit of turmeric. Turmeric is an anti-inflammatory, and some black pepper. Turmeric and black pepper work really well together to help reduce inflammation in your body. So I like to use the one trick with garlic and onions together where I chop them and leave them on the cutting board for 15 minutes. When you do that, they have they're more bioavailable, which means that they have more nutrients because they've interacted with the oxygen in the air in your home, and it's a way of making them more medicinal. So they have more healing properties when you leave them out for 15 minutes than if you just chop them and throw them in the pot real quick. Plus, it's also nice to have the smell of onions and garlic and herbs in your kitchen. It's
Mhm.
like, I don't know, for me, it reminds me of home just to smell chopped herbs in the kitchen. So that's another thing. Or make sure that you get fresh herbs like thyme, oregano, and rosemary. Those are also anti-inflammatory. And when you're going through any kind of illness, I highly recommend you using fresh herbs, not dried herbs, not seasoned salts, or seasonings that have been dried. Because if you think about it, the difference between fresh rosemary and dried rosemary is really big. I mean, even if you have something that's been sitting on your shelf for a year, we have spices that have been sitting on our shelves for a long time.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
more time they sit on your shelf, the less nutrients they have. So if you can get fresh herbs and chop them and use them right away, they have more healing properties in them and more nutrients in them than anything dried. So I highly recommend getting yourself a bundle of these herbs, and I show you how to dry them or to freeze them. Freezing is actually better when you want to keep the nutrients in your herbs for anything extra, because sometimes we have these bundles and then we can't use them all, and then they end up getting thrown away because they get moldy. But you can freeze them and you can dry them after you're done using them, and then save them for the next time.
Mhm. That's really great. I hadn't considered that. I think the that those dried herbs are more for taste as opposed to for anything healthy
That's
for your
right.
body. Yeah.
Yeah. So go
That-
for taste and health.
Exactly. Exactly.
hmm So I mentioned five things, I think. So I said onions, garlic, greens, herbs, and oh no, that's four things. I just mentioned those four things, but a variety of all of those is going to be important. Is like get creative with your onions. You know, you can do shallots. That's another one. So when you are thinking of what you want to buy from the grocery store, get a variety of onions and garlic and herbs and greens. And those help to boost your immune system and to
hmm
decrease inflammation.
I probably should be a little bit more adventurous with onions. I tend to like red onions because they don't make you cry.
Yeah.
And and
hmm
so I use those practically every
hmm
day in most meals. And they have a lot of anti-inflammatory properties as well. So
They do.
yeah, but
Yeah, get adventurous. You know, sometimes you got to just grab something that you've never tried
hmm
and try it. There's no harm in it. You buy one small thing, one small onion, taste it, see if you like it, you know.
hmm
So I like to experiment a lot with food, and sometimes I go to the grocery store and I mean, the produce section is my happy place, I gotta say.
hmm
Just to experiment.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. Can you explain the role of inflammation in cancer and recovery and which foods? Well, you've already talked about the ones that are anti-inflammatory. Tell me if that's something you're comfortable mentioning or not.
Um, I, the one thing I'm comfortable saying is the less inflammation in your body, the better.
hmm
We want to just decrease inflammation. And some people don't know what the word inflammation means. It means that there are parts of your body that are swollen.
hmm
So if you have swollen legs, swollen arms, swollen anything, or you're recovering from something, you want to get to a point where you can decrease that inflammation in your body, because it's not just what you can see. Sometimes it's happening at a
hmm
microscopic level, excuse me.
hmm
If your veins and valves and other parts of your body are inflamed, it slows healing and sometimes can cause problems. So what I'm comfortable saying is that you can eat certain foods that will help decrease the inflammation and help your healing journey.
hmm Beautiful. Thank you so much.
hmm
Let's talk about permaculture and growing food for healing.
Mm.
So, you're a permaculture designer who loves teaching people how to grow food forests in small places or small spaces.
hmm
For our listeners who may not be familiar with the term, what is permaculture and how can growing even a little of your own food contribute to the healing process physically, emotionally, or spiritually? That's a big question.
So, permaculture is designing spaces and foods to work together in a way that you are minimizing how much you have to do and how much the plants have to do in order to grow. And it's a it's really a system of growing that we've been doing for thousands of years that uses small spaces in order to grow like complementary plants, plants that grow really well together. So I love to grow greens and onions and garlic and herbs all together. And they work really well together because they support one another with nutrients. So they feed each other underground. Or, one might use more nitrogen, the other one might use more phosphorus in the ground. And so they help one another in these spaces. So that's really what permaculture is about, is growing complementary plants and trees in the same space so that they work together. Now, I help people grow food forests, and food forests, for me, it's 7 layers. So 7 types of things growing together. So like I said, like big trees, so, like an oak tree, for example, that's where you're going to have, like, your critters are going to eat in that tree. So, your squirrels and other little animals might build a nest, birds might build a nest in that tree. Then, your smaller trees, like your fruit trees, lemon, plum, apple, pear. Then, the third layer are things like shrubs, like rosemary and thyme. Your ground cover, your lettuces, your greens. Bulbs are garlic and onions. And then you have like roots, which are beets and potatoes and turnips. And then vines, blackberries, even passion fruit grows on vines. So all of these can be planted in a very small space together. It can be done in pots. It can be done on large plots of land, depending on what space you have and where the sun is, mostly in your house or your apartment. So I teach people how to do this for their region and for, the circumstances that they're in. And they're an effective way of growing because they are often drought tolerant, because you're growing things with like, you don't have to use as much water when you grow things together. And the plants support each other with shade or, other nutrients. And I teach people about this in Food Indie, and Food Indie does stand for food independence. And I spell it with a Y, so it's FOODINDY. It rolls off the tongue easier when I'm podcasting. But it is about food independence. And right now, especially with prices going up, I'm encouraging people everywhere to get a food forest going. And it sounds more complicated than it is, but I promise you, it's not complicated. People say, "Oh, I don't really have a green thumb." And nobody's born with a green thumb. Just like any other skill you have, you can learn to grow. And you know what? Part of learning to grow is that you do kill some plants, and that's okay. That's okay. But then you put another seed in the ground and you start over. Every season is a new opportunity.
Beautiful, beautiful. If a person has limited mobility or
Mm,
limited energy during treatment, are there simple, accessible ways to connect with growing food, even on a small scale?
there are. There are. Um, and also to think about your caregivers and people around you, because there will be times when you might not want to be outside, or you feel like you can't stand up, or you don't want to be outside for too long. That's when you call upon your support system
Mhm.
and
Or if
tell
you
people,
have to avoid the sun or something
or
like
if you have to
that.
avoid the
Hmm.
sun, you can wear a hat or garden later in the afternoon. That's actually one of the tips that I give people too, is when you're planting, do it later in the afternoon when the sun is lower in the sky.
Hmm.
Because plants adjust better overnight than they do if you plant them in the heat of the sun and then, you try to get them going that way. So, there are going to be times when maybe getting outside isn't for you, but you can grow lettuce in your house. You can do an indoor edible garden. There are lots of things that you can grow inside. And sometimes plants are great company, especially if you are inside a lot and you're just starting to feel like maybe a little down in the dumps. Having a plant that's growing beside you that you can eat from is in itself really good for the soul. So I would
Mhm.
say start small. If you're growing one plant, that's just fine. Count on people to help support you with growing your garden. If you need somebody to come over and water, or you need somebody to do a harvest for you, call upon your people
Mhm.
and help them participate in the bounty that you're growing. Because this is about not just feeding ourselves, it's about feeding our communities, our neighbors, our friends, our family. Everybody benefits from a producing garden, even if it's tiny.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. For someone who's overwhelmed, again, we're staying with this theme of limited energy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what would be the top three most accessible, nourishing foods or meals to prioritize? And I know that we all have different needs. Our bodies actually responds to different foods differently, but any suggestions there?
If I had to give three foods, I would say stick with the greens as much as possible. Those are going to be the foods that'll help boost your energy. So I would get collard greens, beet greens, and the roots, and mustard greens. Those are all that I would those would be from the garden what I would recommend. Make sure that you also get things like oatmeal. Oatmeal is great for digestion and it's a mood booster. It helps get that depressed mood up a little bit. So if you have yourself a bowl of oatmeal every morning, some greens for lunch, and eat a light dinner, don't stuff yourself because that can cause you to have other digestion issues. Um, so those are actually, a few categories, but with, foods within them that you can eat.
That's interesting because I've been just seeing a lot of conflicting information about oatmeal,
Mm,
and then oat milk, which I
yeah.
love, by the way.
Hmm.
But I don't know if there's a difference between if you're just having the oatmeal as a cereal or as a milk. Do you know?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There could be something in the processing
Mm-hmm.
because you want to get organic when you can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things that I've heard is just about the way that the oat milk is
Mm-hmm.
processed and the oatmeal is sprayed in the fields. So you want to go for your organics if you can. And people often say organic is more expensive, and it is. But if you have a bulk section at your grocery store, you
Mm-hmm.
can get as little or as much as you want and get your organics. So even if you get a cup of oatmeal that's organic, it's going to be better for you than getting one of those big tubs of inorganic oatmeal and taking those, pesticides and sprays in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great, great. What's your perspective on supplements versus whole foods? When might supplementation be particularly important?
I was not a huge fan of supplements until I found this one brand that I've been recently taking for the last year or so, and I absolutely love this brand. It's called Black Girl Vitamins, and I'm not sponsored by them, but what I've found is that now that I'm taking them, I recognize how important supplements can be in addition to eating your whole food. So supplements are exactly that. They supplement your food. So they are in addition to the foods that you eat. You cannot replace your food with supplements and have the same results.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to make sure that you're still eating good foods. And again, let me qualify that, because sometimes all you can get in is a supplement because your body's not feeling well. But long term is what I'm talking about, is that you don't want to substitute your food for supplements,
Mm-hmm.
because your body needs food in order to stay warm, in order to do all of the functions it needs to do. Your heart needs food. Your liver needs food. Your stomach needs food. So, um, I'm a firm believer that real food and whole food is so much more valuable than anything that's going to be in a bottle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You know,
agree.
yeah,
Agree.
yeah.
Thank you.
Hmm.
So I noticed in your bio that you are a cultural humility facilitator. What is that, and how do you approach conversations about food and healing across different cultural backgrounds and food traditions? And how do we honor cultural food practices while also supporting health? You mentioned earlier that the comment that my grandmother did it, I eat like this because my family has always eaten this way. And maybe if you can just speak to that in your response, that would be helpful.
Hmm. So, you know, in the 90s, we used the word cultural competence a lot. And, it was in the workplace, it was in our schools. And cultural competence is the idea that we all get to learn about other people based on, their cultural group. But Dr. Melanie Tervalon and some of her colleagues over at Children's Hospital began to look at humility as more of a factor rather than saying, okay, Black folks like to eat greens and black eyed peas. You go into the room and say, well, tell me your story. Who are you? And what kinds of foods do you eat? And when I was pregnant with my first daughter, my OBGYN would come into the room and he would say, okay, what did you have for breakfast today? Instead of making the assumption that I was going to have a particular type of breakfast. So
Hmm.
cultural humility really is being open enough to people's stories individually rather than just lumping them together and saying, this is what you must do because this is what you look like,
Hmm.
right? What that does is it opens up the door to learning about people and their food ways, right? So, like I said earlier, yes, we eat what we were taught to eat. Most of our shopping lists are based on what our parents taught us. And their shopping lists were based on what their parents taught them. So we have this generational way of shopping. And sometimes we add new things as new products come in. We add those to our meals. But for the most part, we tend to eat the way that we were taught to eat. And when we connect to our ancestral ways of eating and our ancestral ways of cooking, oftentimes it takes out the processed foods. If we think back, most of us have a parent or a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle that had a garden. Somebody in our family had a garden.
Hmm.
And you would go over there and you would eat something from their garden and you just remember, ooh, those tomatoes or those greens just tasted so good. And they bring a sense of pleasure. Food should be pleasurable. When we eat, it needs to be something that when you taste it, you're just like, this is so good. And most of our ancestral foods bring that feeling up for us. You know, when we think of how somebody cooked something, there's also a story that goes along with it. Oh, I remember she used to cook this thing or bring it to the Christmas dinner, or, you have a story associated with that, and that can make you smile. And it's good for your health because you are smiling, because you are recalling those beautiful memories. And so there's research to show too that eating your ancestral foods and eating foods from the land where you're from is better for your health. So, I come from people who eat lots of rice and beans. And rice and beans, I eat them often. And they never fail me. I don't have stomach problems when I have them. I feel well when I have them. Other people, it might be that they need to have avocado every day. Because that is what the food from that region, or for the food from where they are from, that's what grew. That's why local is important. Now, most of us in the United States are removed from our ancestral land, right? But if we know about what people ate in the region where we're from, and we can replicate that here, then our bodies will thank us. So think back to not just the shopping list that you were taught about, but also think back, what did my ancestors eat? And some might say, I don't even know where my ancestors are from. Well, take a guess, you know, based on who you are and who your family is, because sometimes people want to pinpoint exactly where they were from, what town they were from, and that's not possible for everybody. But you can say, okay, in West Africa, people eat plantains and rice and beans and, lots of greens that you can replicate. So I believe that we all have to tap back into our ancestry to eat the types of foods that are going to benefit our bodies the most.
Mhm.
And stay away from all the processed stuff. I know I've said that many times, but I'm hoping that really sinks in.
Yeah, stay away from all that processed food. It's funny, I love rice, and I thought, God, I wonder if, like, okay, I wonder if, like, there's some Asian in my background because I just could eat rice every day.
Mm-hmm.
But when I did my ancestry test, I found out that, oh, people in Sierra Leone harvested rice, and
Yes.
that's where my love of rice comes from. So, really, really happy to find out those kinds of things as well. Thank you for this because I think it's so important to um, really spend some time with our bodies and how our bodies responding to foods. I encourage people to keep a little journal, for instance, a food journal, particularly if you're having challenges in some way. I've
Mm-hmm.
shared the story that I used to have aching in my elbows, and I started making notes of what was happening and found out that it was inflammation caused by eating eggplant, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
just by paying attention and making a note of, okay, when I feel this, what happened just before that? Like
Mm-hmm.
our bodies are really incredible machines, very intelligent, and gives us this feedback loop that we need in order to be healthy. So
That's a
everything,
really, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, everything you've shared has just been right on the mark. So.
It's so important to pay attention to that. When your body doesn't feel good, ask yourself first, what did I last eat? Whether it's a headache or a belly ache or you can't go to the bathroom, ask
Mhm.
yourself, what did I last eat? And then you might
Exactly.
be able to tie it back to what you shouldn't be eating because your body does not like it anymore.
Hmm. Hmm. So let me ask you if you could leave our listeners with one essential message about food and healing, what would it be?
Eat whole foods. Eat foods as close to how they were grown as possible. Your body will appreciate you. It will thank you with good digestion, with improved health. This isn't about losing weight. This is about improving your well-being and your wellness. Grow some food if you can. If you've got space, if you've got a place in your home that's sunny, grow some food. I've got lots of resources on my website at befoodindie.org where I provide tips for growing your food in big or small spaces. And I'm here to answer your questions. So you can send me questions on Instagram or TikTok or on my website, which I know are going to be in the show notes. Because the more we know where our food comes from, the more freedom we have, because food is freedom. Food really is freedom. So don't get bogged down by all of these different policies that are here to take food, good food away from us. We can work together as a community to feed one another, even when nobody else wants to. We know what to do. We can help one another. So that's what I would say.
Beautiful. You know, when you were talking about permaculture and how these various plants support each other
Yes.
in the growth process, what it brought up for me was the feeling of community, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and how that's an example in nature of the importance of community.
Yes.
Because, you know, some of us have one skill, you know, one set of talents. Others have other things to contribute.
That's
And
right.
when we bring that together, we have a more effective, robust opportunity to live and learn.
That's right. That's right. We each bring our own skills. We each
Hmm.
bring our own expertise. And together, we can do a lot. We can make magic.
We can make magic.
Hmm.
I want to really thank you for being here today, Suzette. This has been so enlightening. I had no idea about letting the onions and garlic sort of breathe for 15 minutes
Yeah.
before actually using them.
Hmm.
And I've learned so many important things today about just all that wisdom in being close to the food that you grow, why it's important, how to actually incorporate that in your life. So I just want you to know that I believe you're a real treasure
Thank
to our
you.
community. And I'm so happy we had an opportunity to share this time. And there are many more questions, and we will definitely have to do this again and dive into some of the other ones.
I'd love that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate what you're doing too.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.